Deep in the Alps, under a sky torn by rain and screams, a tiny wolf pup lay bleeding, trapped, helpless, with eagles circling like executioners overhead. Was it their prey, or something more shocking? A desperate fight no one saw coming. One man stumbled into this brutal scene, and what happened next will break your heart or make you question everything. Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 supporters to uncover more stories that grip your soul. The Alps loomed like ancient sentinels under a bruised March sky, their jagged peaks piercing the heavens, cloaked in a thin shroud of snow that refused to melt even as spring whispered on the horizon. Rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the pine needles and turning the ground beneath my boots into a treacherous slurry of mud and ice. The wind roared through the valleys, a mournful howl that carried the weight of countless winters. I'd been out here for nearly a week, alone with my thoughts and the ghosts of this Swiss wilderness, tracking the wolf packs that roamed these mountains like shadows. My name's Daniel Berger, a 38-year-old wildlife biologist who spent more nights under these unforgiving stars than in any warm bed back home in Munich. I'd thought I'd seen it all, blizzards that buried trails, avalanches that swallowed whole slopes, but nothing could have braced me for what I stumbled upon that day. It started with the sound. Through the hiss of the rain and the wail of the wind, a chorus of screeches cut the air, high-pitched, insistent, like a warning carved into the storm itself. I adjusted the hood of my rain-soaked jacket, squinting through the downpour, and that's when I saw it. A wolf pup, small enough to cradle in my arms, huddled beneath the gnarled roots of a fallen pine. Its silver-gray fur clung to its frail frame, plastered down by the wet, and its pale blue eyes flickered with a mix of fear and defiance. Blood pooled around its hind leg, a crimson stain spreading across the snow, seeping from a gash so deep it made my stomach twist. Above it, a dozen eagles wheeled in the sky, their wings slicing through the gray, talons gleaming like daggers in the dim light. Their cries echoed off the cliffs, a relentless chant that promised death. I took a step closer, my boots sinking into the muck, my breath catching in my throat. These weren't just birds. They were predators, kings of the air, and they had this pup in their sights. I gripped my hiking stick tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I saw the glint of metal half buried in the mud. A steel trap. Its jaws snapped shut around nothing now, but streaked with the pup's blood. Someone had planted this here, right in the heart of the preserve, breaking every rule I'd spent my career upholding. Anger surged through me, hot and sharp, but it faded fast when the pup let out a whimper. A soft, broken sound that barely reached me over the rain. It was dying, and it knew it. I waved my stick at the eagles, shouting into the wind, my voice hoarse and raw. "Get back! Go on!" They flapped higher, retreating just enough to give me space, but their eyes never left the pup. Dark, unblinking, waiting. I dropped to my knees beside it, the cold seeping through my pants, and ran my gloved hand gently along its side, its ribs pressed against my fingers, sharp and fragile, and when I reached the leg I had to pull off my glove, my fingers trembling as I touched the wound. The bone wasn't just broken, it was crushed, splintered into jagged shards beneath the torn flesh. A sour stench hit me, the telltale rot of infection already setting in, curling up from the wet fur. This wasn't a simple cut. This was a death sentence, ticking down by the minute. Then, cutting through the storm, came another sound. A faint, quivering cry, not from the pup, but from somewhere close. I turned, my eyes straining against the rain, and pushed aside a tangle of dripping branches. There, nestled in a bed of pine needles, lay an eagle chick, its wing bent at a sickening angle, its downy feathers matted and slick. It opened its beak, letting out another weak call, and suddenly the pieces fell into place. The eagles weren't here to kill the pup. They were guarding their own. Their fallen kin may be hurt by the pup's desperate flailing in the trap. This wasn't a hunt, it was a standoff, a clash of survival born from panic and pain. I sat back on my heels, the rain pounding my face, my mind spinning. I'd built my life on cold, hard science. Observe, record, let nature run its course. Meddling too much threw everything off balance. I'd seen it happen, ecosystems tipped into chaos by well-meaning hands. But those eyes, the pup's pale, pleading eyes, burrowed into me, unearthing a memory I'd buried deep. 3 years ago, up on these same peaks, I'd lost Max, my hunting dog, to an avalanche. We'd been tracking ibex that day, the sky clear and blue when the snow gave way, a white tide crashing down the slope. I'd screamed his name until my throat bled, clawed at the ice until my nails split, my hands numb and useless. I'd found him too late, his brown eyes frozen open, his body still warm under the snow. I couldn't save him. Now, here I was again, staring down at another life slipping away, and the old ache ripped open like a fresh wound. I couldn't walk away, not this time. My hands moved before my brain caught up, pulling the spare jacket from my backpack, a battered old thing, frayed at the cuffs but dry inside. I scooped up the pup, its body limp and shivering, and tucked it into the fabric. Then I reached for the eagle chick, its tiny form so light it barely registered in my palm, and nestled it beside the pup. They pressed against each other, two broken creatures sharing what little warmth they had left. I zipped up my pack, slung it over my shoulder, and started down the valley toward the ranger station, a mile of rugged terrain stretching out like a gauntlet. The storm had other plans. The rain thickened, snowflakes swirling into the mix, stinging my cheeks like shards of glass. The trail twisted beneath me, a narrow ribbon of mud and stone winding through the pines. Every step a gamble against the ice. My boots slipped on a moss-slick rock and I went down hard, my knee slamming into the ground with a jolt that shot up my spine. The flashlight flew from my hand, spinning through the air before vanishing into a crevice far below, its beams swallowed by the dark. Darkness crashed over me, thick and suffocating, leaving only the wail of the wind and the relentless screeches of the eagles trailing behind. They were closer now, their wings beating a furious rhythm, their cries sharp with something new. Anger, maybe, or betrayal. Had taken their chick, their blood, and they weren't letting it go without a fight. I staggered to my feet, my legs trembling under the weight of exhaustion, my lungs burning with every ragged breath. The cold gnawed at my bones, seeping through my jacket, my fingers numb as they clutched the bundle tighter. The pup whimpered again, a faint sound against my chest, and I whispered back, "Hang on, little one, just hang on." The station was out there somewhere, a flicker of hope in this endless night, and I wouldn't stop until I reached it. I pushed forward, one step, then another, the mud sucking at my boots, the wind shoving me back like a living thing. Half a mile in, a dim glow pierced the haze. A jeep, its headlights wobbling over the uneven trail, tires crunching through the slush. It rolled to a stop and a grizzled face leaned out, squinting through the storm. "You lost your damn mind out here?" the man growled, his voice rough as the gravel under his tires. Johann, I realized, a shepherd I'd met once or twice in the valley towns, his hands calloused from decades wrangling flocks. He was 60, maybe more, with a face carved by hard winters and harder choices, his gray hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. He caught sight of the bundle in my arms, the pup's matted fur peeking out, the chick's twisted wing barely visible, and his jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be messing with that," he said, low and deliberate, his breath fogging in the cold. "That trap?" I said it. "Not for fun, mind you. Those wolves took 3 lambs last week. I've got mouths to feed, same as anyone." His words landed like a stone in my gut. This wasn't some faceless poacher, some villain I could hate and forget. This was a man pushed to the edge, his livelihood bleeding out with every sheep the wolves dragged off into the night. The preserve was my sanctuary, a fragile web I'd sworn to protect, but to him it was a battlefield, and the lines weren't as clean as I'd thought. "You're breaking the law," I shot back, my voice sharp, rain streaming into my mouth as I stood there shivering. "This is protected land, not your personal kill zone." He didn't flinch, just stared me down, his eyes hard as flint under the brim of his cap. Law don't mean much when your flock's dying. You think I like this? I've got a wife who can't sleep for worrying, a grandson 5 years old, skinny as a reed, asking why we don't have meat on the table. Those wolves don't care about your rules, and neither can I when it's them or us. His voice cracked, just for a second, betraying the weight he carried. The nights he'd lain awake counting what he'd lost. The mornings he'd found his lambs torn apart in the snow. I opened my mouth to argue about ecosystems, about balance, about the bigger picture that stretched beyond his little patch of mountain. But the words stuck in my throat. I saw my lab back in Munich, the charts and data pinned to the walls, the sterile safety of it all, so far removed from this raw, bleeding reality. Then I saw his life. The wind-battered hut perched on the hillside, the bleating sheep huddled against the cold, the boy with hollow cheeks clinging to his grandfather's leg. Who was I to judge him, standing here with my ideals while he fought to keep his world from crumbling? I'd spent years studying the wild, preaching its sanctity, but out here, in the rain and the mud, it wasn't black and white. It was gray, messy and aching. A growl ripped through the storm, deep and primal, cutting the argument dead. I spun around, my heart slamming against my ribs, the bundle slipping in my grip. She emerged from the shadows, the pup's mother, a she-wolf with a coat like smoke and eyes that burned through the dark like twin embers. Her lips peeled back, fangs glinting in the Jeep's headlights, drawn by the scent of her. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here to take back what was hers, and she was closing the distance fast. "Get in!" Johann barked, throwing the door wide, his voice tight with urgency. I dove into the Jeep, the pup and chick sliding against my chest, my boots smearing mud across the seat as I scrambled to pull the door shut. He slammed the gas, tires spinning in the slush before they caught, the engine groaning as we lurched forward, but she was faster. She lunged, a gray blur of muscle and fury, and crashed into the driver's side with a force that rocked the Jeep sideways. Glass exploded inward, showering us in glittering fragments, and Johann yelled, a raw, guttural sound as her claws tore into his shoulder. Blood sprayed, dark and hot, soaking his sleeve, dripping onto the floor, and the Jeep swerved as he fought the wheel, his hands slick with red. I grabbed his arm, steadying him, my own hands shaking, slick with rain and panic. The pup whimpered against my chest, a faint, desperate sound, and the chick trembled beside it, its tiny body pressed into the folds of my jacket. I pressed them closer, my voice breaking as I whispered, "Hold on, just hold on." The she-wolf reared back for another strike, her growl shaking the air, her massive form filling the shattered window. I braced for the end, teeth in my throat, the Jeep flipping into the abyss, all of us lost to the storm. Then the sky erupted. The eagles came down like a storm of their own, wings slicing through the rain, talons flashing in the headlights' glow. They didn't go for the kill. They swarmed her, diving and clawing, a chaos of feathers and fury that filled the night. One raked her flank, leaving a streak of blood on her gray fur. Another snapped at her ears, its screech drowning out her snarls. They moved as one, a relentless wave, their massive wings beating against the wind. She staggered, snapping at the air, her focus splintered just long enough for us to break free. Johann floored it, the engine roaring as we peeled away, mud spraying behind us, the she-wolf's amber eyes fading into the dark as the eagles drove her back. We hit the ranger station at full tilt, the Jeep skidding to a stop outside the weathered outpost, its lights a faint beacon through the snow-streaked night. I stumbled out, my legs like jelly, my breath coming in shallow gasps, and thrust the bundle into the medic's hands. They worked fast, too fast to process, the pup's legs severed above the brake, its whimpers fading under sedation as they stitched it up. It lived, though, its chest rising slow and steady, a fighter to the core despite the missing limb. The eagle chick made it too, its wings splinted tight, its tiny beak opening in silent protest. But when I stepped outside, the flock was gone. their cries lost to the wind. They'd saved us, then left their own behind, and the weight of that settled over me like a fog. Johann slumped in a chair inside, blood seeping through the bandages on his shoulder, his face gray and drawn under the station's harsh lights. I sank to the floor across from him, my soaked clothes clinging to me, the adrenaline bleeding out until I was just a hollow shell. Our eyes met, just for a moment, a silent reckoning, two men who'd seen too much and said too little. He didn't thank me. I didn't apologize. We just sat there, the storm raging outside, the weight of it all pressing down until it felt like the walls might crack. A month later, I climbed back up that valley. The snow had thawed, the Alps bathed in a fragile spring light, the air sharp with the scent of pine and the promise of renewal. I found the pup near the ridge, 3 legs now, its gait uneven but determined, trailing its mother through the grass. She watched me, her amber gaze steady and unyielding, but didn't charge, just stood there, a sentinel over her own, her fur catching the sun in silver streaks. 100 yards off, the eagle chick perched on a crag, its feathers gleaming gold in the morning light, its cry ringing out like a salute across the cliffs. I stood there, the wind tugging at my jacket, tears welling up until they spilled over, tracing warm paths down my cold cheeks. Max flickered through my mind, his bark echoing through the trees, his boundless trust as he bounded ahead of me, the way he'd looked at me like I could fix anything. The ache softened, just a little, the guilt loosening its grip. "It's not perfect," I murmured, my voice lost to the breeze, "but we gave them a chance." I turned away, the mountains sprawling before me, wild and vast and alive, their peaks cutting the sky like they'd done for centuries. In that quiet light I felt it, a spark of hope, faint but fierce, burning through the dark, a flame that refused to die.